Well, Jamie Shea is a former NATO Deputy Assistant Secretary-General for Emerging Security Challenges. Jamie, if chemical weapons were deployed, how does this change this conflict?
Well, it certainly would represent the crossing of a red line because chemical weapons, of course, belong to a category called WMDs, or weapons of mass destruction, such as biological weapons, radiological weapons, nuclear weapons, of course, in that they have the capacity to kill hundreds of people, if not more, at a single go and spread terror across wide areas. And as you rightly said in your introduction, the possession and the use of these weapons is outlawed by an international treaty that Russia signed up to in the early 1990s, even if it never totally destroyed its stockpile of chemical weapons. But the if word is an important one here, because before the international community accuses Russia formally of using chemical weapons, we have to establish the facts and we have to establish the evidence. The situation is still a bit sketchy for the time being. So, of course, a proper investigation has to be carried out to establish those facts.
Well, can we talk about that? I mean, is it possible even to prove in an environment like Mariupol, which is under siege and being bombed, if chemical weapons have been used?
Yes, it is, because obviously NATO countries today have very sophisticated detection equipment. Much of that has been transferred to Ukraine. The Ukrainian armed forces are trained in the detection of chemical weapons. And of course, if people have been injured or even killed, although there's no evidence yet of significant casualties from this attack, then obviously doctors, forensic doctors can quickly examine those people, those bodies. The traces of the chemical weapons are naturally still in the human body. And so, as on previous occasions where, for example, chemical weapons have been used in Syria or by Russian intelligence agents on 2 occasions in the United Kingdom in recent years, it's quite easy now with this sophisticated technology to determine that they are chemical weapons. But of course, they have to be chemical weapons which are explicitly banned under the Chemical Weapons Convention. And there are a number of chemicals like phosphorus or industrial chemicals that obviously are not things that anybody would want to see used on a battlefield, but which do not formally come under this Chemical Weapons Convention.
Russia watchers will say that Moscow has form on this, a record on the use of chemical weapons already, not just in Syria, but in the targeting of individuals.
Yes, absolutely. And indeed, not simply in the UK against ex-Russian spies in terms of assassination attempts, but also against Alexei Navalny, of course, the Russian opposition leader who was poisoned by his own government. And in Syria, although Russia itself is not accused of using chemical weapons, it obviously condoned the extensive use of chemical weapons on numerous occasions by the Assad regime. All of that has been well documented by a United Nations agency in The Hague called the Organization for the Prevention of Chemical Weapons, which carries out very extensive investigations and has a lot of credibility in this area. So given the rather desperate tactics that Putin has been using in Ukraine, we saw yesterday reports of rape as a war weapon. We've become used to the shelling of civilian targets. You can't exclude that Putin, in his quest to get some kind of victory quickly in Ukraine, might resort to chemical weapons. But on the other hand, when you have a specific incident, it's very important to get the facts right before proceeding further.
Jamie, good to talk to you. Thanks very much for coming on the programme. That's Jamie Shea in London.